This video will demonstrate the valve replacement process for a Blackmer LB601 compressor. The procedures and techniques are typical for other types of Blackmer LB HD reciprocating gas compressors. When servicing valves, we recommend replacing the components of all 4 valves, and this is best done by removing the cylinder head and working on a bench as shown here. Begin by removing the valve caps. With a 1 1/16 inch socket, turn the valve cap counterclockwise to loosen and then remove it from the unit. Remove all 4 valve caps. Beneath each cap is a valve cap gasket. Remove all 4 of the gaskets. Here we see the cylinder head with the 2 discharge valves to the right of our screen and the 2 suction valves to the left. It is very important to install the valves in the correct location, suction or discharge. Next, remove the head bolts that bolt the head to the cylinder. They will have been loosened during the process of removing the head from the cylinder. There are 4 bolts securing each of the 4 valve cover plates. Loosen the valve cover plate bolts using the appropriate wrench or socket and remove them. Some models, 100 series, do not have cover plates. A valve hold-down screw and valve cap screw directly into the head casing. Then, remove the valve cover plates. Next, remove each of the 4 identical valve spacers. For the suction valves, remove the valve assembly and the gasket under the valve. Set these parts to the side. For the discharge valves, first remove the valve posts and set them aside. Using needle nose pliers, remove the valves from each discharge bore and then remove the valve gaskets. As you can see here, each valve cover plate includes an O-ring that seals the cover plate onto the face of the head. Remove each of the O-rings in the valve cover plates in preparation for the rebuilding process. The new O-rings are included in the rebuild kit. This completes the valve teardown process. Now we begin the rebuild phase of our valve replacement. Included in the rebuild kit are 4 valve gaskets, 4 valve cap gaskets, 4 valve cover O-rings, 2 discharge valves, and 2 suction valves. The valve spacers will remain the same, as will the valve cover plates, the valve posts, the valve hold-down screws, and the valve caps. In addition to the rebuild kit, you will need a torque wrench, an Allen wrench, and some gasket lubricant. For easy access, place the cylinder head on top of some wooden blocks. This raises the unit to allow you to reach the underside of the cylinder head. First, place each of the 4 valve gaskets into each valve pocket or bore, and use a seal pick to be certain that the gaskets are properly seated in the machined valve seat area of the head. Next, locate the 2 1/4-inch gauge port pipe plugs on the side of the cylinder head. An installed unit will have pressure gauges installed in place of the pipe plugs. When looking at the head with the plugs aligned to the right, the 2 front valve pockets closest to the compressor inlet flange will house the 2 suction valves. Place both of the suction valves into the proper valve pockets. Be sure that the valves are seated properly atop the valve gaskets. Never place the valve gasket on the bottom of the valve when installing the valve into the valve pocket. It could come off of the valve and fail to seat properly in the valve seat area. The remaining valve pockets house the discharge valves. Place the discharge valves into the valve pockets with the smooth 3-hole side of the valve facing up. The side with 10 holes faces down. Use pliers to install the discharge valves into the valve pocket, reaching underneath the head to assure that the valve is properly seated atop the valve gasket. Next, install the valve posts atop the discharge valves, making sure the small tip on the bottom of the valve posts nests into the center bore in the top of the valve. Then install the valve spacers on top of each valve or valve post of the 4 valves, again making sure that they are seated properly. To install the valve cover plates, first back off the hold-down screw by turning it a couple of turns counterclockwise. This allows ample clearance for the top of the valve spacer. This is very important so that the hold-down screws do not interfere with tightening the valve cover plate bolts. Using a small amount of lubricant, lubricate one of the O-rings, making sure it is covered completely. Place the O-ring inside the groove in the valve cover plate. Do this for all 4 valve cover plates. To ensure a clean, tight seal, use a towel to wipe down the surface of the head and the valve cover plates to clear any dirt or debris that may prevent a good seal. Place the valve cover plates on each of the valves. Hand tighten the bolts to secure the valve cover plates to the cylinder head. Next, use a torque wrench to tighten the cover plate bolts. Important, double check to make sure that the valve hold-down screws have been loosened or removed as described earlier before torquing the cover plate bolts. Tighten the cover plate bolts per IOM specifications. Install and tighten valve hold-down screws into cover plates and torque per the specs in the IOM book torque table. An Allen head socket will be required to apply the proper torque. Finally, place the valve cap gaskets atop the valve hold-down screws. Then place the valve caps onto the valve hold-down screws. Use a torque wrench to tighten the valve caps to IOM specs. This completes our valve replacement tutorial for a Blackmer LB601 reciprocating gas compressor.